Hey there, welcome to the final stage of this kit build where we're going to be applying the final details and applying the weathering to the kit. So before we begin, let's have a quick look at what we're going to need for this stage. So what we're going to need obviously is the kit. We've got the weapon systems now, which we're going to be painting. We've got all the crew and the other weapons, and we've got some sponge here for applying chipping. Got a collection of paints here, so various metallic paints, black, white, and the paints that we're going to be using to make up the dust wash. Some brushes, our ivory black oil paint, and a palette. So let's get into the first stage of the weathering process on this kit, where we're going to be doing all of the chipping. So the first stage of the weathering process is taking some of the brightness out of the decals that have been applied. As you can see, they're really white on the black background, and obviously that wouldn't be the case if the vehicle had been out in the weather. The decals would chipped and scratched, and they just wouldn't appear as bright as they do. So what we need to do is using black paint and our sponge, is to chip the decal so it looks like parts of it have been damaged and just the black paint underneath is shown through. And then what we're going to do is, with the airbrush, we're going to put a very, very light coat of black over the decal, very, very light, just to take away some of that brightness so it doesn't pop off the model and it's a little bit more subdued. So I'm going to get on with that now, and I'll do some close-ups in a moment so that you can see the how it's meant to look once it's all done. Let's get started. What we're going to move on to now is cutting in all the panel lines on the model to create this weathered, dusty effect. What I don't like doing with applying washes to my models is simply just getting a big brush and covering the model in the wash and hoping and praying that it goes into the recesses and looks okay. It doesn't work that way. This aspect of the build requires a bit of patience, and it also requires a bit of hard work in terms of getting it right. So what I've got here is my palette. I've got my wash that I'll be applying for the dust, also just some thinners in here. You probably can't see it. And over here I've got some white, it's a titanium white oil paint, and again with some artist terps right there. So again, I'm not going to go through and have you watch me do the entire kit. All I'm going to do is I'll just do one aspect of it. You can have a quick look at it. I'll take some stills, and then I'm going to go through and do the whole kit up. This is the part of the build where you really need to take your time and be patient with it, and you can't rush it. It does take a fair bit of time, by the way, because you need to go through and get all these panel lines and recesses and get them right. What we're going to be using the white oil paint for, by the way, is creating those streaks on the kit to give it an additional sense of realism. So let's get started with it. Okay, so let's just go and cut in a panel line so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm then going to go through and do the rest of the model, and I'll do a few stills of that particular stage, and then I'll go through and I'll put the next stage on, which is putting some white tints onto the kit as well. So let's get started. And again, with getting the consistency right, although I've already thinned this wash, I do have some thinners here in case when I put it on the kit I find that I need some more. So I'll just start by putting this in. Have plenty on the brush, and what you'll find is through capillary action, the wash will actually just follow through those panel lines and start moving up in and around. And again, you just need to be really patient with this part of it and take your time and make sure that it doesn't wash over the panel lines or get into places that you don't want it to go. When going around objects like this, where there isn't a distinct panel line, you need to be extra careful and just use the tip of the brush. And what you're really doing is just guiding the paint around, as opposed to actually painting. You're just more or less pushing it around. Capillary action is going to do most of the work for you, but you just need to ensure that you're not being too over the top with putting it on. It's just a very slow process, and as I said, let the paint do most of the work. Because it's so thinned down, it'll want to move around, and it's just going to naturally collect in those areas. as you can see there. So I'm going to get on now and do the rest of this, and I will show you some stills very shortly. Okay, so for this stage of the weathering process, what we're going to do now is get this titanium white oil paint and start adding some streak lines basically on the kit itself, so that we can add a little bit of contrast to the black and also help assist in creating that weathering process. So all we do for this particular phase is we'll need a couple of brushes for this. Generally you'll need a fairly small one. This is a 00, and then a larger one. Then this is the Citadel large brush I've got here. And all we want to do with the oil paint, and I'll just quickly do one here for you, just on this fin here, is you just want to get a little bit of oil paint on the kit, and I'll just go along this this panel line here. We'll put a couple of little tiny dots in with the white where we want to see some streak lines coming across, and then we just get our larger brush and dip it in the oil thinners and take a lot of that off, and then just very slowly start running the brush over it with the thinners on it that's been dampened down, and it'll start putting those streak lines on. They only need to be very, very faint because they'll become quite distinct over the black, but what it does is it helps create some modulation and some contrast on the black to add that realism effect there. What I'll do again is I'll just go and do some more, and I'll do some close-ups for you so you can have a closer look. So the last stage of the weathering process for this particular kit is we're going to get the airbrush and we're going to give the entire kit a very, very light coat or dusting of the wash that we made to cut all the details in. The reason that we do this is firstly just to take the edge off the black. When you look at black on a vehicle, it's never a stark black like what we see here. It's always attracts dirt and all sorts of different environmental factors. So we're just going to cover it in, give it a very light coat of this, and also what it's going to do is just help tie in some of these areas as well where we've cut in and also added these white tints, just to tie it all together so that there's not these stark contrasts between all the different weathering techniques that we've used here, and that way bring all the model together. So let's go ahead and have a look at how that's done, and I'll come back with some stills. So this brings us to the end of this particular build. Thanks for joining me, and it's been a really interesting journey. I hope you've learned a few things. I'm just going to post up a few stills of the finished model now, and for you to have a look at. And if you go to my blog, www.thepaintingbunker.com, you'll be able to see the stills as well on there. And please join me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/thepaintingbunker. Cheers, bye for now.